Further, Krishna describes how one can achieve him if one is an impersonalist, especially those who practice Ashtanga Yoga. For them, Krishna now gives again the recommendation of achieving him, which is already discussed in the 6th chapter. Here Krishna is now again summarizing those points for achieving him. So Krishna says, Prayana kale manasa chalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bhravar madhye pranamaveshya samyak satam param purusham upaiti divyam. One who at the time of death fixes his life hair between the eyebrows and in full devotion engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Krishna is now recommending the process of yoga which he had described in the 6th chapter, Sankhya Yoga. So Krishna is telling at the time of death, one should raise the life hair and fix it between the eyebrows. Prayana kale manasa chalena, with his mind fixed on the Supreme Lord with full devotion. In Ashtanga Yoga system, the yogi is recommended to meditate on the super soul in the heart, and the super soul is having the four-handed form. So one should meditate on the Supreme Lord who is situated as the super soul with full love and devotion. One has to fix his mind on the form of the Lord and raise his life hair and fix it between the eyebrows. And then Bhruvor Madhye Pranam Aveshya Samyak Satam Param Purusham Upaiti Divyam. In full devotion, engaging himself in that way and remembering the Supreme Lord, one has to quit his body, and in this way he can achieve the Supreme. But those who are not practiced with the Ashtanga Yoga system, or the Bhakti Yogis, they are recommended to always remember Krishna by always being engaged in serving Krishna and chanting the holy names of Krishna. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has made the process of remembering Krishna very easy. It is all recommended in the scriptures already, and Lord Chaitanya has come and declared it. He has exposed those teachings openly, and he has demonstrated how to always be remembering Krishna simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By chanting this Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one can fix his mind, one can fix his attention always on the Supreme Lord, and in this way one can achieve the Supreme Lord. So further Krishna says, Yadaksharam Veda Vido Vadanti Vishanti Yadyatayo Vitaragaha Yadichanto Brahmacharyam Charanti Tatte Padam Sangrahena Pravakshye. Persons learned in the Vedas who utter the Omkara and who are great sages in the renounced order enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practices celibacy. I shall now explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. As I was explaining, there are two types of transcendentalists or spiritualists. One is the impersonalist, who think that God is some sort of energy, impersonal energy, and the other are the devotees, who completely understand that God is a person, He is Lord Krishna, and they engage in loving devotional service to Krishna. So here now Krishna is describing process of spiritual elevation and achieving the impersonal Brahma Jyoti, which is the effulgence which emanates from Krishna's body. The effulgence is called Brahma Jyoti. Those who think that God is impersonal, they do not enter into the spiritual planets. Spiritual planets are known as Vaikuntha Lokas. They are all in the Brahma Jyoti. So those who don't believe that God is a person, they cannot enter into the spiritual planets because they don't believe that God is a person. So they can enter into the Brahma Jyoti and be in the Brahma Jyoti as one spark. of spirit. So they'll be in the Brahma Jyoti, and they'll be there as long as they want to be. And because every soul is a person, one cannot live in Brahma Jyoti for a long time. Because as a person, we have feelings, we want to do something. So those who don't elevate and enter into the spiritual planets by understanding that God is a person and developing a relationship with the Supreme Lord, they cannot enter into the spiritual planet, and they cannot live in Brahma Jyoti for a long time because there is no activity in Brahma Jyoti. So they will again fall down to material world and continue material activities here. So there is a danger of falling down from Brahma Jyoti if one does not understand that God is a person, and if he doesn't promote himself into the spiritual planets by developing his loving relationship with the Supreme Lord, then he has to fall down from Brahma Jyoti. Sometime or the other he falls down. So there is a danger of falling down. So anyway, those who believe that God is impersonal, for them Krishna is recommending that those who are learned in the Vedas, the great sages, they follow the renounced order, the path of renunciation. They utter Omkara. Those who don't believe God is a person, they like to chant Om, a spiritual vibration. Om it represents the Supreme Lord Krishna. And Hare Krishna mantra also contains Om in it. And in the Hare Krishna mantra, we are very clear that God is a person. But those who don't like that God is a person, those who don't like to accept that God is a person, they like to utter Omkara. So they will also get purified from all material contamination, and they also can enter into the Brahma Jyoti of the Lord. So Krishna is telling such people, they practice strict celibacy. Without controlling sexual engagements, without controlling sex desire, one cannot get liberated from this material body. The attachment which the conditioned soul has in this world is because of bodily sense enjoyment. And among all sorts of sense enjoyment, sex enjoyment is the most attractive and most strong attachment for the soul. So if one has to get liberated from this body, one has to give up sex enjoyment and practice loving the Supreme Lord. And those who don't believe God is a person, they utter the Omkara, they practice chanting Omkara, and they practice celibacy, they practice renunciation, and then they can also elevate and enter into the Brahma Jyoti. So Krishna is describing that process in brief. Krishna is telling, Sarvadvarani samyamya mano hridi nirudhya cha murnhyadhayatmanah pranam asthito yoga dharanam. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head. One establishes himself in yoga. So here Krishna is giving the process of spiritual elevation for the impersonalists. So Krishna is here telling that one has to first of all stop all sensual engagements, because in this material world the soul is attached to sense enjoyment. If we have to elevate and get liberated from this material world, one has to first of all close all the doors of sense enjoyment. There are 5 Jnanendriyas and 5 Karmendriyas. So one has to stop all this sense enjoying activity, and especially one has to give up sexual engagements, sex enjoyment, and then one has to fix his mind on the Supreme Lord who is there in the heart as Paramatma, and then one has to raise his life air to the top of the head, and then in that way one has to be established in yoga. Further, Krishna is telling, Om ityekaksharam brahma vyaharan mamanusmaran yaf prayati tyajan deham sayati paramam gatim. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. So here Krishna is further explaining that after situating in that yoga process and raising the life air to the top of the head, one has to chant Omkara and remember the Supreme Lord. So very clearly Krishna is telling that one has to remember Imam Anusmaran. Krishna is telling Om Ityekaksharam Brahma Vyaharan Mam Anusmaran. God is a person and one has to remember him and chant the Omkara at the time of death. Those who practice Bhakti Yoga, they can chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and remember Krishna at the time of death. And Yaprayati Tyajan Deham Sayati Paramam Gatim. By remembering the Supreme Lord, when one quits the body, he achieves the Supreme Planet. And only a Bhakti Yogi, a person who has established his loving relationship with the Supreme Lord Krishna, either in his Krishna form or as the Narayana form, he will enter into the spiritual planets, either Vaikuntha Lokas or Krishna Loka. Wherever he has his relationship, he will enter into that spiritual planet. But an impersonalist, he will not be allowed to enter into the spiritual planet. He will enter into the Brahma Jyoti.